What's going on, guys? Steve here, your DIY dude. We are in our test drive after we just replaced this clutch and possibly saved ourselves 1,200 bucks. Alrighty, look at this. No more slipping! Woo! Oh, we fixed our clutch. Let's bust out those tools and put away your wallets, because we're doing it ourselves. Let me just run you through some of the tools we got going on here that we're going to be using. We got a 1/2 inch impact, a torque wrench, breaker bar, some extensions, little air chuck to blow out the bell housing on the transmission. Got a ratchet so you don't have to sit there and ratchet all your bolts out. That thing will just drive them out pretty quickly. Little jack, some jack stands. That's the big bad boy jack that we're going to be using to get the car up, and then we'll be thrown up on the jack stands. Little oil pan for the transmission fluid that we're going to be draining. Little bottle jack. We got a 1/2 inch socket set. Little pry bar to get the CV axles out. Rubber mallet to get the pilot bushing out. A little Crescent tool set off Amazon. It's been a lifesaver. Got the flywheel. Your rear main seal. Your thread locker for your flywheel bolts, as well as your pressure plate bolts, and then your EXEDY clutch and pressure plate. So, well, let's begin. I have to remove this this piece of plastic housing in here. Take off these plastic rivets. Take them out, and then we can start working on the subframe. You got these two guys in here that you're gonna have to remove to get that panel off. You have two 12mm bolts that are holding on the bottom of this battery tray. They're kind of a pain to get to. So if you're looking from the top, you have one in this top corner, and then you have one in this top corner right underneath these clips. And that's the way you're gonna have to get this guy out. This is how the battery tray is sitting in there. So if you were to take a look at the bottom of it, these are the two bolts that are hiding that you're gonna have to get to. Basically everything on this transmission is going to have to get removed. You're going to remove this airbox. Probably one of the easiest ways to get this airbox out is once you undo this little clamp right here and the clamp on this guy, you're going to wiggle it out off those two lines, and then you're going to pull it straight up and out. It's gonna want to hit on this cover, so you're gonna have to pull this cover up a little bit just to get it to pull all the way free. If you guys want a little tip on how to organize your bolts, you get a piece of cardboard, you put little holes in them, and write on the bolt what they are and where they go. That way, when you go to put this thing back together, we're not scrounging around to figure out which bolts go where, because that's a nightmare. Now we're gonna make sure we want to get all these grounding wires out. You got this grounding wire right here. You got this clutch line going to your slave cylinder right there that we're gonna have to pull off. Gotta get this wiring harness out of the way, and we gotta remove this shifter linkage. Once you get these 3 shifter linkage bolts out, you got one right there, one to the right side, right there, and one under here, right there, number 3. And so once you get those cotter pins pulled, and you get those 3 bolts out, you should be able to just pull this whole shifter linkage out of the way. There you go. See how it moves, and just pull it back into this open recess right here. If you unpull this plug off the transmission, pop, just like that. And it looks like it's got a couple folding plastic connectors that are gonna need to come off as well. Yeah, one right there. We're gonna be breaking loose 4 of these subframe bolts. So looking from the front passenger side, that's the front corner of the subframe, lower subframe. That's the driver's side, lower subframe. And then come towards the back of the car on the driver's side. You got number 3 coming over, and you got number 4, so just crack those loose. These 4 subframe corner bolts are gonna be 17 millimeters. All right, so once you crack these 4 corner bolts loose, don't take them out. I'm gonna go ahead and put a tie-down strap on the steering linkage. All right, so for the steering linkage, you're gonna have to tie it off. So I just have some tie straps, wrap them around each steering linkage, because when you drop this subframe, the steering linkages are gonna wanna come down with it. Be careful when you're wrapping your tie straps through your engine block that you're not putting them around any type of tubes that are gonna snap, or any hoses that are flexible. Try to keep the pressure and weight off just fragile items that are in your engine bay. So try to get as best you can. I just tied them to this engine mount right here, and hopefully that's gonna hold them for now, because if you drop your steering linkage, you're gonna have to get a realignment and all that fun stuff. So let's try to stay out of that ballpark. All right, guys. Work on the lower control arm bolts. You got 1, 2, 3 on both sides. Let's get those out real quick. There's gonna be 17 millimeter bolts right down here. Just break them loose, and you can ratchet them out. We're gonna go to these 2 bolts on the sides and the wheel wells. So you're gonna take, these are just through bolts. You got 17 millimeter. If you have a 1/2 inch impact gun, it's gonna make it a lot easier to get out. Put an extension on there, reach it in, and let's get it out. After we remove those 2 wheel well bolts, we're gonna come in under the engine, and you got this engine mount bolt that we're gonna take out. Alright, next we're going to be removing this clamp off the steering linkage. So it's got two 14mm bolts on either side. Go ahead and take those guys out. Alright, so this back 14, that's holding up the steering linkage. I just have a 3/8 drive, and then I have a 16-inch socket, or 60mm socket, with a couple extensions tied together to get some leverage. And then I connect the 16-inch to the 3/8 drive, and that's the way I got leverage to basically create your own breaker bar. So if you don't have a breaker bar, a 3/8 breaker bar, that's the best way to probably get it done. So hopefully that helps you out with that back 14, because it was seized on there pretty good. I just sprayed a couple times with WD-40. So for this bolt right here, this is going to be a 10mm, and you're going to have to use a Crescent wrench to get to it to take off the bracket for this top hose real quick. This bracket right there, we're going to take that guy off. We're going to come over here. We're going to loosen this bolt right here. We're going to take this bolt fully off, and we're going to loosen this bolt right here so this piece of metal can swivel. We want this piece of metal to swivel out. Alrighty, we're getting this 14mm bolt off right here. That's behind the steering linkage. A little pain to get to. If you get a 14mm Crescent wrench, stick the circle end on that side, and you get a rubber mallet. Sorry for the camera angle. Get a rubber mallet and tap on the end, and that's what you're gonna have to do to break this bolt loose. And then you should be able to get it there by hand, by slowly but surely working it out. Alright, in this 14mm bolt, you don't have to take it all the way out. You just need to break it loose so that you can get this to swivel out of the way, because this is going to be coming down with that subframe. And from the driver's side, it's these two bolts right here. So we got to take this one, take that far end fully out, and then loosen this close one. So the best way to access these two 17mm bolts is probably through the driver's side wheel well. Just get a breaker bar, shove it on there, and that one just broke loose. And then once it breaks loose, you can access it from the top in the engine bay. And same thing with this other one. Once you break them loose, if you stick a 1/2-inch breaker bar down through the engine bay, get yourself a Crescent wrench, and you have yourself a makeshift handle. And that way you can, instead of trying to ratchet 2 inches every 15 minutes, you can get a makeshift handle on this 1/2-inch breaker bar, and that bolt will come up. So after we get that front 17mm bolt out, can be picked up by one person if you want to beast mode it. So definitely manageable with one person if you need to pick it up and move it around. For the CV axle nut, go ahead and pop this piece out real quick with the flathead, just to get it to be smooth so you can undo it. Just get that metal to sit outside of that hole. There you go. Just get a small screwdriver in there, flathead. Push that out so you can unscrew it. I'm not sure what the metric equivalent is, but this is an 1.25" half-inch socket that fits on this. It's not a perfect fit, but it'll work. There you go. Use whatever tool you think will work, but using a little pry bar, using a rubber mallet, tapping it in to the back of the CV axle and prying it out. Get this passenger side CV axle out of the transmission housing. You're gonna have to take out these three 14 bolts right here. 1 and 2, and try to get that loose. You got to take out your passenger CV axle. It's gonna be connected right here, this tap shaft. Pull the spline out of the wheel hub. You're gonna have to get a hammer, knock it free from this spline, and then you have to undo 3 bolts. 1, 2, and 3. There's 2 on top. Undo those 3 bolts. And this shaft is gonna come out of the transmission. And so just pull it free from the transmission. Alright, so the next step is going to be removing the transmission. Make sure you got everything disconnected from the top of the transmission, your shifter linkages, all the wiring harnesses, your ground wires, your slave cylinder hose is connected right there. So we got to remove this bracket right here. Go ahead and start removing those things. Alright, we're going to go ahead and remove this bracket right here to help us get the transmission out. So you got 3 10mm bolts right there. Go ahead and remove this black bracket right here. It's on the bottom of the transmission. 3 10mm bolts. Alrighty, let's start removing some of these transmission bolts. We got a 17 right there, 1 right there, 1 right here. Just work your way around, and we're gonna have two of the last 2 bolts are gonna be on the top of the transmission. Those are some tight bolts. That was a pain. Alright, so these transmission bolts are a pain in the ass. I got 140,000 miles on my car, but for some reason these are seized in pretty good. what seemed to work is get a 1/2 inch impact, back it out as far as you can with the impact, spray some WD-40, go forward with the bolt all the way till it's flush, and kind of just work it back and forth until you get WD-40 all the way through those threads. I'm still having issues with getting this bottom bolt out. As you can see, this these exhaust bolts are in the way. You can't really get a good socket on the back side of this, so I'm just using a 1/2 inch breaker bar and slowly working it out. I'm just terrified of breaking that bolt off, especially in the tranny housing. That would suck. So trying to work it out slowly and surely, spraying WD-40 on the back side, pushing it forward, and then pulling it back out and spraying WD-40 on both sides. So if you have another rust penetrant that works good, use that as well. So slowly but surely, just try to use caution with these bolts and try not to break them off, because that's just going to be more work than it's worth. That one's a little tough to get to. You got the exhaust right behind that bolt, so a little crescent, a socket, and a little extension. Makes yourself a little breaker bar. Hopefully you don't find this problem on yours, but this bottom bolt right here that's on the very bottom of the transmission, pulling it out, it's definitely stripped in the middle of the threads, and I don't know what happened. Because I didn't put this, I don't think this tranny's ever been taken out, so either rust buildup or something that happened inside the threads and definitely jacked up that bolt and made it a pain to get out. So we're on the back of the transmission where the CV axle, the passenger side CV axle connects in. You want to make sure you take off this connector, this electrical connector, and then you got one more bolt right here you have to undo. That's just a little push pin right here. Push that guy and then pull it back out. I used a 1/2 inch breaker bar to break this bolt loose on the back of the transmission, 17mm. After you get those 3 bolts undone on the bottom of the transmission, make sure you put a jack under the transmission before you loosen these bolts and back them out. You got a 17 right here, and then under there you got a 17 right here, so there's 2. Go ahead and break these 2 top guys loose, 2 17s. Alright, take 10. Oh my gosh. This project is a pain in the ass and you're trying to figure out how to do it. Alright, hopefully this video is gonna save you the headaches that I'm going through, the kind of the bonehead moves that I've got going on. So I was dropping the transmission. You got this bracket on here that I thought would be able to clear. I don't know why I thought that, but it's not gonna clear for the transmission to come out. So you gotta take out these 4, I think they're 17mm. 1, 2, 3, I think is actually that's all that's holding on that bracket. So take those 3 out. Once you get those 3 out, then you're cleared. Off. Pressure plate is ready to come off with your clutch. she is. Red and all. For your pilot bushing, I just have a 1/2 inch extension that fits perfectly on the top of it. Just tap it in. Alright, before you put your flywheel back on, make sure you put a pair of clean gloves on. We're going to put this flywheel bolt on, and once you got these bolts on, you need to torque them down to 87 foot-pounds. I like to put red thread locker on these bolts, keep it from backing out. That's the last thing I ever want to do, is come back and try to do this again after not cranking these bolts down good enough or not taking the time to put some red thread locker on them. Alrighty, we got the flywheel on, torqued down to 86 foot-pounds in a crisscross pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Alright. Now we're going to work on putting the clutch and the flywheel on, or the clutch and the pressure plate on, sorry. And you got your spline alignment tool. There you go. So you got your spline alignment tool. Put the clutch on the spline alignment tool, stick that tool through the pilot bearing, and then set your pressure plate on top of it. Now we're going to torque down the pressure plate. Honda specs is 19 foot-pounds, but we're going to do 22 foot-pounds and 22 foot-pounds. I put red loctite on the bolts. If you're lucky like me, you might have a wonderful wife who's willing to get down and dirty with the transmission. Yes! Use some great brake cleaner to clean out the spline, clean out the housing, bell housing, and she did an awesome job. I'll just give you a quick overview. This is the transmission housing. EXEDY will include a little grease kit, a little grease tube, and you want to make sure you grease up the spline real good. Also the shaft that this pilot bearing sits on, or this throwout bearing, sorry. And you can just pull this clutch fork all the way out. And you'll see how this fork sits in between these two bearings, or in the bearing arms. And so just slide that back on, just like that. Make sure it's just kind of buttery smooth, that there's no friction, no sticking when that's back on like that. So looks good. And that's it. Make sure you grease up this the ball that this sits on right here. Grease up the back of this, grease up this guy, and just basically grease up all these components.